we're at another crossroads. We can either continue to stand for free expression, understanding its messiness, but believing that the long journey towards greater progress requires confronting ideas that challenge us. Or we can decide that the cost is simply too great. And I'm here today because I believe that we must continue to stand for free expression. But inevitably, some people are going to use their voice to try to organize violence, to try to undermine elections, to hurt others. And we have a responsibility to address these risks. Because when you're serving billions of people, even if a very small percent of them cause harm, that can still be a lot of harm.
Joining me to discuss Zuckerberg's comments and Facebook's dilemmas is Thane Rosenbaum. He's a distinguished university professor at Thoreau College. He's also the author of a new book to be published early next year, Saving Free Speech from Itself. Thane, congratulations on the book, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Michelle.
Right, Thane, Facebook facing a lot of criticisms. One of the issues is that Mark Zuckerberg did not pull down a Trump campaign ad, which Democrats said was factually inaccurate. Here's how he responded to that.
I believe that it is important for people to be able to hear and see what politicians are saying. I think that when they do that, that speech will be heavily scrutinized by other journalists, by other people.
So Zuckerberg making the point that it's not Facebook's role to fact-check these kind of ads. Does he have a point?
No. Facebook also serves as a news service. It has many roles. That's why it's facing now antitrust problems, because it's a large monopoly. When it's functioning as a news service, it's not any different from I24.
Well, it is very different because they're journalistic standards. And who is Facebook?
Yes, and he's functioning like a news service.
But who is Facebook to determine whether something is factually accurate or not, and then to censor that content? This could be very dangerous. Facebook controls so much of the dominant ideologies that are propagated. If we give Zuckerberg the power to decide what political ad can and cannot run, that is how you shape and influence elections. Forget about Russians posting some ads.
But Michelle, CNN, MSNBC failed to run that ad. I24 wouldn't have run that ad. What gives you the right to make that decision? You say, look, if this is a blatant lie, we don't give this to her because we're a news service.
Who determines that something is a blatant lie? You know, you have Zuckerberg essentially speaking out of both sides of his mouth. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, he's saying it's not Facebook's role to check. On the other hand, they now have a new feature that is looking at Instagram in particular, which of course is also owned by Facebook, and it's going to pop up a little icon if they think that this is inaccurate. It's part of their combating disinformation campaign. It's going to launch a pop-up that's going to appear when people try to share these Instagram posts, and it's going to say, do you really want to share this anyway? So there, they are determining if something is factually accurate or not.
What gives them the right to do that, according to you?
Well, that's my point. You see, my point is when you have a social media giant like this that has such power and such influence, the fairest thing is to just allow everyone to have a say. Let the reader beware. Let people use their own discernation tactics and figure out what is real, what isn't real, because you run the risk of Facebook censoring content, and we've already seen Facebook censoring conservatives across the board.
Again, news services don't take that position. They don't say we just throw out all ideas. We don't care if it's real, whether it's fake. We already know the role that Facebook played in the disinformation campaign, the Russian cyber misinformation campaign that affected our 2016 elections. We see the way this large behemoth can be exploited and manipulated.
But arguably, it's even more powerful than a news organization, considering its reach around the globe. You have Facebook.
Yes, so it's spreading lies even more so around the whole world.
Or censoring content that it doesn't agree with. There's been a number of claims from conservatives who have been censored on Facebook. Isn't that ultimately more dangerous?
You know, Michelle, liberal democracies in Europe don't put up with this. Our understanding of the First Amendment, or rather Mark Zuckerberg's understanding, and this is why I wrote this book, is just patently wrong. The founding fathers of this country never thought that this is the way the First Amendment should be used. They were thinking about democratic participation, wise decision making, making people better informed. Facebook is not playing a role here in making people more informed. They're being more confused and lied to and manipulated.
But then free speech means I can go out on the public square and say whatever the heck I want, provided I'm not inciting violence. Facebook and Twitter are the modern equivalents of the public square. By preventing people from going out there and making their comments, they are censoring free speech and violating the First Amendment.
Right, and so they're playing the same role that the government plays in your soapbox analogy when they have an obligation, since it's their website, it's their soapbox, to play a role as a responsible, accountable regulator. What he's saying is, I don't want to have any responsibility. I want to just have as many people have Facebook pages as possible. Neo-Nazis, violent groups, terrorist bomb makers. I think it's absurd. And, in Europe...
Isn't it safer, though? Isn't it safer rather than to give more control to a social media giant like Facebook, which has demonstrated political bias, and it's not the only one?
Michelle, I do not feel safer thinking that the Boston Marathon bombers learned how to make a bomb on YouTube, and in Europe, they would have never been able to watch the video.
With the exception of content, which is a direct instructional kind of video, to your point, on how to make a bomb. That is direct incitement of violence. Isn't it safer to let anybody say whatever the heck they want to say?
Not lies. And you keep saying, well, Thane, how can you know when something is a lie? Come on, we should be giving ourselves some credit.
If
things are demonstrable lies.
If somebody goes to Central Park and stands on a soapbox and starts to say things that you walking past think are factually inaccurate, do you think you should summon the government to pull that person off the box?
I'm no techie, but this is a whole different enterprise. Remember, the algorithm feeds me pages. You're talking about me walking by a park and going, this person seems like a lunatic. And Facebook directs the feed to me.
And you're not concerned that Facebook then decides what you should be reading, what you should be seeing, how you should be influenced, especially when it comes to elections?
I'm especially concerned when they're not weeding out blatant lies, falsehood, when they're not even showing any responsibility that they are also functioning as a news services. And when they are, Michelle, I think they do have journalistic requirements to say, when we function as a news service, we simply do not disseminate misinformation.
My point is that they're being hypocritical, because some content they're going to classify as inaccurate, whilst other content, perhaps political ad campaigns, which bring in revenue, they're not. All right. We agree that something needs to be done regarding Facebook. Thane, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thane Rosenbaum.